Hey, true believers. Chris Matt coming at you today with X-Men number 57. Now, in terms of our reviews, we have come to the end of the Onslaught event. However, in terms of the actual reading order, there is one more called Onslaught Epilogue. But sadly, I don't have that, so we're just going to go ahead and end off with this issue. And this was printed October 1996. So when we jump into the book, we are in what they call Professor X's, like sanctum? Inner sanctum. And he's saying, locate Professor Charles Xavier. So they're looking for the mutant Charles Xavier. But check this out. It says that mutant designate Professor X no longer exists, because as we saw Onslaught, when Xavier escaped that entity, he has lost his his psi powers. So at this point, it's kind of like, something traumatic happens to you and you have to start facing the reality of it, and that's what he's having to do here. And he's having a hard time accepting the fact that he is no longer a mutant when he was supposed to be like the teacher. And then what I like is we go from here, Xavier's talking about how with the Fantastic Four and the Avengers gone, the X-Men having to pick up the slack in terms of world crises. And he says, with all that going on, we've barely just started to make repairs. And, we get the cracked mirror of the First Class, and so we see a broken house and a broken man. And I love the artwork here from Kubert and the art team, where you just see him brooding and just having a hard time really seeing the scope of what's going on. But then it's all set off by the chipper thing of the doorbell going ding dong. So it's just kind of like, okay, random. And this is where we enter Val Cooper. And as you guys remember, she's sort of like the mutant liaison for the government, and she also is the sponsor of X Factor. And Scott, he's asking her, he's like, are you here to tell me about my brother Havoc? Because I guess something happened to Havoc during the Onslaught event. Sadly, I don't have any of those X Factor comics from this time, so we couldn't go over them. So if y'all know what happened during X Factor, let me know down in the comments so I can at least go try to check it out, and we can go over the reviews at a later date. But what happens is stakes are immediately raised. Val says that she's here for Xavier. As you can see, Wolverine is not having any of it. Now this book, the title of this comic is called Man. It is Scott Lobdell writing, Andy Kubert pencils, Art Thibert inks, Richard Starkins and Comicraft doing the letters, Joe Rosas doing the colors, Malibu's doing the enhancements, and of course during this time Bob Harris was editor-in-chief. Now the X-Men, she enters, and the X-Men are just saying that they are not having any of this. Even Bishop, he says, whatever provocation you cite or the authority you proffer, Xavier will not be taken from his home against his will. So everyone thinks that Val is taking him against his will, and she's trying to say that we're taking him for his own protection. She goes for his own sake as well for the safety of the rest of the world. Which, when you put it that way, you can kind of understand. I mean, think about it. Someone who's responsible for that much death and destruction, it's a matter of time before the mob comes to, instigate a riot in front of the school. Or, what if, there's lingering effects of Onslaught still inside Xavier. So that's what she's trying to say. And everyone else is saying he's not going. But what I like is Storm kind of has the voice of reason, being as the second in command to the X-Men. And she goes, I do not see where we have any choice but to allow Val the right to examine him. How else can we assuage, I always get that word wrong, her justifiable concern that something like Onslaught will never happen again. So we kind of get into this real big battle. But what I like is we have a moment this restful moment where out of all the death and chaos that Onslaught did, Hank McCoy's sitting here watching, life happen. He says, "It's the only appropriate appellation which comes to mind when describing the city and the populace placed here, post-Onslaught," because he's saying splendiferous. However, what I like is why he's seen all this peacefulness. He sees all these kids playing. They go, "I'm, Metallo, Lord of the Mutants." And the mom's like, "Pretending to be a mutant is vile and disgusting, and I won't have it." So even though this feels a little on the nose, it's still done tastefully, because then Hank, is saying resilient, as in it never changes. So we see that even though the X-Men saved the day, there's still all this hatred and prejudice going on. So even though, like I said, it feels a little too much on the nose, it works within the context of this story in this universe. And now we continue on with this battle. Everyone's kind of given their insight into it. We got Jean talking about, she was inside Xavier's head. And then we cut to the Daily Bugle. And J. Jonah Jameson, well, not the Daily Bugle, but we cut to J. Jonah Jameson. And he is talking to Bastion. And Bastion's kind of telling him, you need to stop poking into Candidate Creed's campaign. And what I like is JJ here is just like, if you're trying to intimidate me, you're wasting everyone's time. I don't do scared. And Bastion tries to throw something else at him, and he goes, "Here's my driver's license, credit cards, date books, movie rental card. It's all there." And so Bastion, and I like how he's kind of always shaded in this darkness, he goes, "I misjudged you, Mr. Jameson. You are clearly a man who stands behind his convictions. My apologies." And this is kind of a cool down book / build up books. Now we're starting to rev up for the next arc, which is called Operation Zero Tolerance, which focuses on Bastion. So I like how Lobdell, again, out of helping orchestrate this whole Onslaught thing, now we're already working on the next story. We cut back again. Joseph kind of comes in and starts giving his 2 cents on Xavier. And what I like here, let me get into it, skip a couple pages, is why everyone's talking about wanting to take Xavier. Joseph here says, "And I'm to be left blameless?" And Xavier, being the type of man he is, he goes, "Yes, Joseph, you've been given a second chance. Make the best of it. But I've done things in the past several months which I should not have done. Things that I will someday be called to answer on, both in my heart as well as a court of law. After everything I've put you through, after the damage I've done to all we've worked to accomplish." And so everyone kind of starts to see, because Xavier even says, well, everyone fighting back and forth with Val talking about how he's not leaving his own home. He goes, "And I've suddenly become so old and infirm that I don't have no say in any of this." And so just like children fighting for their parents, they go, "Professor, we're not trying to make your decision for you. You were only trying to protect me, Scott. The same way I've tried to protect all of you over the years." And so I really, really like the way that they've traversed this. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but I just kind of wanted to show, the reason I wanted to go this far is I wanted to show what happens after, Lobdell built up how Onslaught was birthed, the steps that happened to it, and then what happens when the monster is defeated. How do you pick up the pieces, and what happens with finger pointing and whatnot. So this was a really good issue, and that's what I like about a lot of these cool down issues, is sometimes you're like, well, where's the action? But you read it and it's more about the emotion and the human side instead of all the action and glamour that we usually get. So that's what I like about these calm issues, especially the last one that we did. What was it, 337? of Uncanny, where Logan is giving that the psychological help to Xavier, and Xavier's trying to buck him, and he goes, you can't push me away. So I like that this one kind of is sort of that fallout of that last issue. So with that said, if you guys have enjoyed this comic book, please make sure to first and foremost support your local comic shop and see if they have a copy. And if you've enjoyed this review, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys can come to the channel, and we'd love to hear feedback and have a dialogue with y'all down in the comments below. And lastly, before we go, I will try to get the rest of the Onslaught videos that I did have back up. It's just been slow going, rebuilding the channel, so they will be up eventually. So with all that said, I hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.